Welcome to Test Crackers. We're on a mission to make studying for the GMAT not only not suck, but actually be awesome. We put tons of attention to detail and care into giving our students the best possible experiences that they can have in our in-person live and online classes, and of course in our one-on-one private tutoring sessions. And now we're excited to bring some of that care and attention to detail to a more public format via YouTube videos. My name's Isaac. I've been teaching with Test Crackers for a few years now, but I've been in the GMAT game helping people maximize their scores for, probably about 8 years now. And I've helped hundreds of students get into the business schools of their choice, and I'm excited to be a part of your MBA journey as well. Let's teach you how to study for the GMAT. First things first, when you're studying for the GMAT, is you want to think about your personal learning style and your budget, which will help you pick the right type of content provider. The GMAT is more than just a test of your math skills and your verbal skills, but it does test your math skills and your verbal skills, and chances are you haven't polished those skills in quite some time if you're like most MBA applicants. I'm talking about skills like solving for the area of a rhombus or doing long division, that kind of thing. Stuff that you probably were great at some point in your life, but those skills have probably atrophied from disuse, if you're like most people. So what are some of the options available to you as far as learning this core content goes? Well, at the top of the sphere is free, and there are free resources out there. And if your budget is $0, you don't really have much of a choice except to capitalize on those free resources. Now, the good news is there's tons of great free resources out there. The bad news is there's tons of free resources out there, and you might be watching this video because you might already be feeling some of the overwhelm that's involved in selecting a plan. But here's what I'm going to tell you. Almost all plans work. It's just like dieting. Almost every diet works. It just doesn't work when people don't stick to the diet. So you really want to worry more about executing your plan well and staying consistent with your studies than you want to worry about having the perfect plan. Now, having said that, it's definitely worth at least 30 minutes of web searching and poking around, maybe posting in some online forums and asking, hey, what are the best free study plans out there? In fact, I will link a free study plan for you in the description of this video if you want to save yourself 30 minutes of searching. But just so you know, if you're only sticking with free resources, it's probably going to take you much longer to reach your goal score than it would if you engage with some of the paid resources that I'm about to talk about. Now, that's not true across the board, just like almost any rule is not true across the board. There will always be exceptions, and I honestly hope that you're the exception where you get to your goal super fast using free resources, and I've definitely seen people do it, so don't lose hope. However, just on average, I would just recommend thinking about which one is the more precious resource. Are you more time constrained or are you more money constrained? And just pick accordingly. Now, the second thing to consider is your learning style. Are you really the type of person who's going to sit down and study for the GMAT consistently without any outside support network, any outside accountability? It's just you and the internet. Just be honest with yourself. Spending a little bit of money now could save you a ton of pain and anxiety later. So next up in the cost sphere would be printed materials or books. There are actually quite a few great printed material sources out there as well. Again, a quick search online, a quick post on the forums. I don't want to get too deep into specific recommendations in these particular videos just because things do change over time. And as I've been in the industry longer and longer, I've come to realize that a lot of materials are sufficient. Now, if you're really curious about which books are going to be the best for you, and you're really at a loss based on your score goals, just shoot me a direct message at any of the links below in the description of this podcast, and I'll help you out. Or someone from Test Crackers will help you out with some great recommendations, okay? You can also feel free to call us. Our phone number's on our website, which is also linked in the description of this video. So with books, what you're going to do is you're just going to work through the books. Again, most plans work. You just need to implement the plan. So what should you do when you're going through the books? You should definitely take notes. The books, part of the advantage of spending money on the books is you're not just getting the core content in most situations, you're also getting strategy. And strategy is very important on the GMAT because it's not just a quantitative section. It has a quantitative reasoning section. So what does that mean? It means you have to know the bare minimum math concepts, otherwise you're not speaking the language that the test is testing your reasoning skills on. But it's not enough to just know the basic concepts, because they're not just math problems. They're math-themed reasoning problems. And so having a little bit of strategy under your belt will really, really help with that. And I think that's a major value add of most printed materials out there. Before we get too much further, why don't we just talk really briefly about what the GMAT is. The GMAT is about 3 hours long, give or take, depending on which format you take. It's available as of now during the COVID crisis in 2 different formats. You can take it online at home, or you can go to a Pearson test center and you can take the GMAT in person. You can choose the order of the sections you take. There are 4 sections on the GMAT, but you get 5 scores, hence my hesitation. There's a quantitative reasoning, a verbal reasoning, an integrated reasoning, which puts the quantitative and verbal reasoning section kind of concepts together. So the good news is there's no new content in that, just a couple new question formats. And then you'll have an essay if you take it in person. If you take the GMAT online at home, you won't do an essay, which I think speaks to the importance of the relative weight that the essay carries. So the essay is the least important part of your score. Basically, you're just trying to clear a 4 or better. I'll link some essay resources in the description of this video if you want some instruction on how to do that. Pretty much anyone can teach you how to write a great GMAT essay in 20 minutes or less. And there's plenty of free resources about that. Integrated reasoning, like I said, all the quant and verbal study you're doing is already going to help your integrated reasoning score. There's just 4 different question formats in integrated reasoning that are slightly different than what you'll see in quantitative reasoning and verbal reasoning. So you'll just want to prepare for those. But I would say between the essay and integrated reasoning, maybe you're looking at like a maximum of 4 hours total preparation. Most of your study hours are going to go to the quantitative and verbal sections, because those are what combine to make the familiar 200 to 800 score. The essay and integrated reasoning don't affect your verbal score, they don't affect your quantitative score, and they don't affect your total score. They're just separate scores. So you get 5 scores when you take the GMAT. You get your quant reasoning score, which is between 0 and 51. You get your verbal reasoning score, which is between 0 and 51. You get your integrated reasoning score, which is between 1 and 8. And you get your essay score, which is between 0 and 6. Then you will also get your total score, which is between 200 and 800. So when someone tells you, hey, I got a 730 on the GMAT, that just lets you know they had a really great combined performance between quantitative reasoning and verbal reasoning, because those are the 2 scores that combine to make the familiar overall score. So hopefully that kind of sets us all up from the beginning. Now, what does the GMAT test? It doesn't necessarily test how great you're going to be in business school, although it does have very high predictive value, meaning if you do well on the GMAT, it's likely you'll do well in business school. But just so you know, if you do poorly on the GMAT, it doesn't mean you're not going to be a great business leader. It's just one data point. And really, at the end of the day, what the GMAT tests is how good you are at taking the GMAT, which is why these prep classes and resources that we're discussing are so important and so valuable. It's like if you want to be better at tennis, you get a great tennis coach, and hey, you're probably going to progress a lot faster than if you're just like playing around on your own. But some of you are the play around on my own type of learners, in which case, again, we're back to being honest about your learning style and your budget to pick the right content provider for you. So just feel free to reach out to me at any of the links below, again, if you have questions about this stuff. So books are going to give you the content and the strategy, and it's going to save you some time versus just web searching everything, because I haven't found a great free online resource that just gives you absolutely everything that you need to know start to finish. However, some of them do come close. But if your budget is greater than 0, but money is the more time constrained resource for you, and you have the more constrained resource and you have a little bit more time on your hands, then books are a great way for you to go. Again, provided you're a great independent learner and you don't require the structure that a digital self-paced class would give you. So right above that in the cost and in most cases efficacy sphere would be digital self-paced classes. You can check any rating systems online. Those again also change frequently, but most of those content providers, you're going to be able to get some honest feedback from forums and rating sources. And I think, again, a quick web search there can help you out tremendously. If you have questions, let me know. But with digital self-paced classes, you don't necessarily have the accountability of a live instructor. Some of them will allow you to ask questions via chat. Others, you're just on your own with a series of videos. And many people find that it's a little bit easier to digest the content and the strategy from a video source rather than reading a book. So again, it's just about being honest about your learning style and your budget, because most digital self-paced classes are going to cost slightly to quite a bit more versus printed materials. But they'll probably help you reach your goal a little bit faster on average. What I recommend with those is just pick a provider that resonates with you. If you like their branding, if you like their marketing messaging, if you like their anything. Just, you're probably going to learn more from people who you resonate with, who you like. So try to pick your digital content provider based on that if you decide that's the route for you. Now, if you're not a great independent learner and you know that when you have an honest conversation with yourself, you're like, yeah, it's really going to help me to be in a classroom with other students, or it's really going to help me to be accountable to an actual human being who I can ask questions to in real time, etc., then you're probably going to want to go for a live class, either in person or digital. Both are generally very good, provided you get a great instructor. So the main thing to look out for there when you're picking a live class is reviews. Just check the instructor's reviews, who you're considering. Again, try to pick someone who you really resonate with, who you really like. Perhaps, obviously, I strongly recommend checking out Test Crackers when you're picking a live and in-person or online class, but no pressure on that front. We want to work with you if you feel like you resonate with our messaging and our teaching style. But check out the class sizes, check out the materials that you get, talk to someone on the phone if you can, to see if this is the right fit for you, because live classes tend to be a good deal more expensive than digital self-paced classes on average, but you're getting a lot for that money. You're getting a lot for that money. You're getting someone who's working with you, dedicated to your success, perhaps not one-on-one, but they're probably available at least sometimes for one-on-one instruction if you get stuck with things. And also you get that weekly accountability of knowing that someone's going to be measuring your progress. And for a lot of people, that's worth a lot. Also keep in mind that all of these resources I'm talking about are basically nothing compared to the cost of what you'll likely spend on your MBA. So a little bit of money now to get a higher ROI on the same time spent in business school, because if you can increase your GMAT score, you're probably going to get into a more prestigious school and you'll probably have more opportunities later on. It's likely that that money spent now is going to pay off 10, 50x in many cases down the line. And that's really what business school is for most people, is an investment. So I'd recommend thinking about this as well. The other nice thing about great live classes is they'll give you some real education about decision making, about the bigger picture strategy, study strategy, that kind of stuff that is less common in my experience in books and digital self-paced classes. However, if you can find those that you resonate with, again, and you're more the independent learner type and you want to try to save some money, then those are a good option. But if you're going the book route or you're going the digital self-paced route and you're like, yeah, this really isn't working for me, I'm stalling out, I'm losing weeks because, I'm just getting demotivated or something, then my advice would just be immediately sign up for a class and get yourself in gear, because your motivation and your momentum is usually the strongest at the very beginning of your studies, because that's when you're most in touch with the excitement of your objective and your goal, and you're least in touch with the difficulties of preparation and this sort of emotional anguish that can sometimes result, that we are doing our best to reduce through videos like this. Kind of above the live class in terms of the cost sphere is boot camps. And I get questions periodically about boot camps. And the funny thing about boot camps is they can accelerate your progress if you have tons and tons of study hours. If you don't have tons of study hours beyond just the class, they're usually a couple weeks long, and they cram maybe 10 to 12 weeks of instruction into a couple weeks. If you're not working and you have maybe like a 2-month span to study for the GMAT, or maybe like a 6-week span to study for the GMAT, then yeah, a 9-week class is probably not going to suit you. And even a 7-week class is going to lag for you. And that's where the boot camp can come in handy. But I find that's a very small percentage of people. So my advice is don't be seduced just by the fact that they will teach you the content much faster, which they will. The measure of your success will not be how fast they're teaching it to you. It will be how fast you are learning it. So keep in mind, you're cramming 10, 12 weeks of work into a 2-week span. If your brain is not equipped to absorb that information, it's going to take you just as long to really be test ready as it would as if you just took a longer class. So really, those boot camps are for people who are in extreme cases. But if you're in that extreme case, that can be a good option for you. And it's probably, in most cases, going to be comparable or slightly less than the cost of a private tutor. But for most people whose time is the most constrained, but money is the smaller constraint, private tutoring is going to be the best option for you, because having a one-on-one tutor who's really credible and has great reviews is probably going to cost a good amount of money, because these people just demand a lot in the marketplace, because they're really good. They can save you a ton of time. kind of just like a great lawyer could save you tons of money. I mean, many people would balk at like, wow, it's $400 an hour for this lawyer. But if they save you $2 million in a lawsuit, well, you're probably okay paying that, you know? So it's something to think about. Again, this is an investment. So tutors are going to be able to reach your goal the fastest, but I haven't seen any tutors with magic wands. So just be advised, there's still going to be a lot of pressure on you. But if you want the most accountability and the most targeted instruction based on your needs and your specific learning style, and you feel that that is the best way for you to go, and you've got a little bit more in the bank than the average GMAT test taker, then I would strongly recommend getting a qualified private tutor. Again, reviews, make sure they are reputable, and make sure they have a good track record with the students they've worked with. And most credible tutors will get on the phone with you or at least message with you a little bit before you commit to working with them. And what I recommend there usually is, unless you're totally sold on them and you have a recommendation from a friend and you're really ready to commit to like a 10 or 20 hour package, see if you can just do an hour with them as a first session. And then if that goes well, then sign up for a longer package, because most tutors will give you a bulk rate if you're purchasing 10 or 20 hours at a time or something like that. And most tutors should be able to give you a reasonable estimate of about how many study hours you'll need to reach your goal. I found that on average, most people are going to be in the 2 to 5 hours per 1 point gain they want to make on their overall score of study time. So if you're trying to make a 100-point gain, you're somewhere in the 200 to 500 hour range of study hours. And I think that there's a pretty linear progression across the resources that we just went through. So with the free resources, you're more on the 5 hour per point gain side. For most people, like I said, there's plenty of exceptions, but for most people, you're up there. If you're getting into the private tutoring range, you're maybe getting down into that, 2 hours per point or something like that. And then there are some people who have classes on the market that can greatly accelerate your study time. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that a little bit later. But those are a little different than what's currently available. So more on that in a moment. For now, once you've picked your content provider, you're going to want to pick a source of practice problems, because just like if you're learning tennis, you're going to want to go out and practice tennis drills and move the racket and hit against the wall and practice all these sort of skills that you've learned maybe mentally or watched some videos or someone's taught you. You now need to go put those into practice. That's the purpose of practice problems in the initial stages of your prep, at least. And there's really only one great source of practice problems, which is the official guides. There are other sources, but I think quality-wise, there's a pretty significant drop-off, because the GMAT just employs many, many professional question writers. They have a particular style. Their questions are vetted through actual exams. Some of the questions you see on your exam will be experimental questions, which are just for the test writer's research. And so these questions have been refined over a relatively long period of time, usually. In fact, that's why you need to wait 16 days before GMAT, so they have a chance to replenish the question pool that your next exam will draw from, so you're not seeing repeat questions that you've already seen, which perhaps obviously would give you an advantage. So these official guides are extremely valuable resources. So you definitely want a copy of at least one of the official guides. There's a main one published every single year, and those change very slowly over time. So don't worry if you're using the 2015 one or the 2018 one. Basically anything from the 11th edition later, like basically 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, all of those are fine, all the way up to 2021. If you want the newest, spiffiest one, it'll have maybe 20% difference between that and last year's model. But it's really no big deal when it comes to official guide problems. These standardized tests are designed to change very slowly over time. That's what makes them valuable to the schools. Your quant score today is comparable for them to someone's quant score 10 years ago, and they can look at that person's data and say, hey, well, that person did really well in school and got a great job afterwards, and now they're giving us a ton of money. So maybe you'll do the same thing. It's just kind of like how it works on their side of the equation. Now you'll notice I have the big one first. That's the main official guide. You'll also find these supplemental official guides, which are the official guide for quantitative reasoning and then the official guide for verbal reasoning. Those are a little bit smaller and a little bit less expensive. You'll want to save those for later in your prep for timed practice. You want to use the big official guide, in my opinion, for one question at a time as you just build your skills up. And then when you're ready to take those individual skills and start combining them in shorter sets, which is a little bit more like the real test, then you'll use those smaller official guides a little bit later. You'll also want some practice exams to use to simulate the real experience when you're ready for that in your study plan. And any of these resources I mentioned at the beginning, based on your budget and learning style, will give you a study plan. And I've also linked one in the description of this video as well for you if you really need one for free. So what I'd recommend is at the very beginning of your prep, at the maximum a couple weeks into it, after maybe you've gotten the basics down of what's a data sufficiency question, what's a critical reasoning question, that kind of stuff, and kind of relearned a little bit of long subtraction, that kind of stuff. from any of these content providers basically will teach you that. Then you want to take an official practice test from MBA.com. You'll get 2 for free when you sign up for an account with them. And that's very worthwhile because that's really the only practice test that uses the real scoring algorithm and real GMAT questions. All the questions you see there are retired questions from someone else's GMAT years ago. And that will give you a real score and tell you where you're actually starting. So that's extremely important because some of you will just be naturally great at the verbal section. Some of you will be naturally great at the quantitative section or naturally great at integrated reasoning. And so you won't have to put any study time into that. And that'll take a lot of the guesswork out of prioritizing your study. Most people are going to need at least some work on each individual section, but the vast majority of us will need much more on math and much less on verbal, or much more on verbal and much less on math. And maybe, 30% of us would need, equal amounts on both. That's pretty common, actually. Once you've taken that initial diagnostic test, you're just going to work through whatever your content provider prescribes to you. So you're going to do the free resources that you get, your free study plan, or you're going to work through the books and you're going to take notes. And you're going to do the practice problems in those books, or you're going to work through your digital self-paced class and learn what they have to teach you and do the practice problems in that. You'll take your live class and do homework in between class sessions. You'll do your boot camp and they'll assign you homework in that. Just follow the plan. Like I said, most plans work. It's all about executing the plan well, and I'll give you plenty of tips on how to execute well in a moment. Now, once you've gotten into the content building phase of going through your content provider, then they'll probably have you take some practice tests sort of as you go with that. But if you're just working through books, you can just go through all the books before you take your next practice test. And then at that point, I usually recommend switching to some third-party provider exams. There's plenty of them out there. Again, you can do a little bit of research on your own and figure out which one is the best deal for you and which one is the highest quality on the market. And again, that changes from time to time. And I hope this video will continue to be useful, 10 years from now. So I'm not gonna go deep on that. But again, if you want recommendations, just feel free to reach out at any point. Those third-party exams tend to be good in the middle of your prep because they're much better for diagnosing your strengths and weaknesses because they usually have pretty robust analysis features, data readouts where you can see, which types of questions are taking longer, where your accuracy is better, worse, and that's very valuable as you try to work on your weaknesses and shore those up before test day. Once you've worked through those third-party exams, just the other reason you want those in the middle of your prep is even the best simulation third-party exams are still simulations of the real scoring algorithm. Nobody really knows exactly the calculations that the algorithm makes outside of GMAT, and even plenty of people who work at GMAC, which is the sort of nonprofit that puts on the GMAT, that organizes all this stuff for us. And what GMAC is just a conglomeration of graduate business schools. So what GMAC says is basically what the schools say. So the schools have really designed this test, paid other people to design this test for them. So it's a very credible exam. But getting back to these third-party exams, they're just simulations of that algorithm. Many of them are fantastic simulations, but they're not a real GMAT. They're not a real score, which is why I want you starting with that MBA.com test to begin with. If you've already taken a third-party exam to begin with and you're just comfortable with that diagnosis, that's fine. You don't need to retake another MBA.com one. But if you're starting from scratch, this is kind of like the quote-unquote ideal. Once you've gone through those third-party exams and you're getting closer to your real test, you want to switch back over to the MBA.com test to get that real score check. Like I said, there's 2 for free, but you can also buy 4 more for, I think, $25 a piece as of now. And it's great to utilize those, but you'll probably want to save a couple of those just in case you need to retake. FYI, most people are going to end up taking the GMAT 2 or 3 times just because a little bit of luck, if not a lot of luck, is involved in most people's GMATs. The order of questions that you see and the order of topics is totally randomized from test to test. If you see 10 strength area questions on a certain day versus 10 weakness area questions, that's going to affect your score pretty heavily. Now, if you've prepared well, then that won't affect your score as much because what you'll see from each content area is relatively predictable on the test. Like you'll usually see 3 to 5 geometry questions, that kind of thing is very predictable, but the place in the section that you see those questions is very difficult to predict. For example, the first 2 could be geometry questions or the last 2 could be geometry questions. You don't really know. We'll probably get into how the scoring algorithm works and stuff like that in another video, so I don't want to put too much into this video, but just FYI, the GMAT is scored very differently from other exams. So don't worry if you look at your first practice test and your accuracy is really crappy. The GMAT actually doesn't necessarily measure your score purely based on accuracy. It's a combination of accuracy and the difficulty level of questions that you're seeing. And I'll link a video that explains that in a little bit more depth in the description of this video. So you can check that out when you're ready. Hopefully I've already explained why it's good to finish with the MBA.com exams. Essentially, that's like a better score check when you're closer to your actual exam and a better simulation of what you're going to see on the real test. But those have basically no analysis features, so they're not the best for using in the middle of your study. That pretty much covers all the materials that you're going to need for your GMAT prep. Let's talk about some tips for getting the most out of those materials. I would definitely recommend from the beginning doing your scratch work for questions on a separate sheet of paper from whatever book or video class you're working from, because you're going to take the tests on a computer, and unless you're taking the at-home online GMAT and using the digital whiteboard, which I don't recommend using at all personally, I think it's going to hurt your score, not help it. You're going to end up, if you're like most people, doing most of your calculations away from the computer screen, because you can't write on the computer screen when you're taking the exam. You can't use a touchscreen laptop for the online GMAT. You have to use a separate whiteboard. So it's very good to get used to that from the very beginning of your prep, and that'll save you a lot of pain later. Now, there is a simulation booklet that you can get of the little scratch paper booklet they'll give you if you take the exam in person. And it's totally fine to get one of those, but I wouldn't recommend using it until your last couple practice tests, just for the pure simulation of like what the real thing is going to be like. Because in your initial practice tests and your initial studies, you're going to want to be able to look back at your scratch work weeks or months later. And the simulation book just smears quite easily. Quick tip, if you're left-handed on the simulation book, start working vertically. Start taking all your pages and split them into 3 columns. And then start with the left-hand column, then move to the far right-hand column, then use the center column last, so that when you're smearing the left-hand column, that's the least relevant stuff to whatever you're working on. And starting preparing like that from the beginning will really help you on test day if you plan to take the test in person. So I'm not left-handed, but I'm aware of how right-handedly biased our world is, and I feel for you lefties. But a little bit of preparation goes a long way. So you'll want to start with outtime at your starting phases of your prep and just get used to building good habits. Your class that you pick, whatever study materials you're working with, they're going to give you a strategy for data sufficiency questions. They're going to give you a system for reading comp. They're going to give you a system for critical reasoning. And you want to practice those without time pressure so they become automatic. Some of the habits that you have from previous tests are going to translate very well to the GMAT. Many of the habits you've developed for previous tests are not going to translate very well, and you're going to need to rebuild those from scratch. So do that without time pressure to begin with. Then, once you're ready and you're feeling comfortable with those basics, you can start using a count up timer. And that way you don't have like time pressure, so to say. You can take as long as you want, but you're developing some time awareness. And that's a nice stepping stone between untimed and like time pressure practice, which is usually a tough leap for most people to make. And then eventually when you're ready to challenge yourself, you can start taking your average of your count up times for a day or a week and then try to beat your average the next day or the next week. And you can eventually work that down to around 3 minutes per question is sufficient. If you can get that down even further without compromising your accuracy, that's fantastic. That'll help. But basically, as long as you're not spending more than 3 minutes on any GMAT question, you're probably good to go for most people. You might know that you have to average 2 minutes a question, so why 3 minutes? Well, some questions warrant a little bit longer spend because with a little bit of extra time, you can get them to be right. And getting questions right is awesome on the GMAT. But you do have to be careful because if you're averaging 3 minutes, you're going to run out of time. But if you're like most people, some questions will take you a minute, some take you 3, and as long as you're averaging out around that 2 minutes, it's okay. I find that a lot of people put that 2 minute pressure on themselves too early in their prep, and then it just ends up working against them. They get frustrated, demotivated, and they end up giving up, which I don't want for you. That's absolutely the most terrible thing that could happen when you're preparing for the exam is you just give up. Most prep programs should be empowering you. If you're not feeling empowered by your instructor or your program, you should definitely switch immediately. At the end, when you're ready to graduate from that, once you're kind of averaging around 3 minutes, then I recommend using a 3-minute countdown timer on every question to get used to the emotional stress of having that countdown timer, because on the real GMAT, you're not allowed to have a watch or a clock with you in the room. There might be a clock on the wall actually, now that I think about it, in the testing room, but basically everybody's exam is starting at different times, and so the only clock that tells you how much time you have left in the section is on the computer screen, and it counts down to 0 from 62 in the quant section and 65 in the verbal section. And that can be pretty nerve-wracking for a lot of people, okay? So you want to start to get used to that as quickly as possible. Last tip here is, especially on the quant side, you're going to want to keep a list of problems you'd like to go back to over and over. And I've found that the biggest mistake people make when they're studying for the GMAT is they do too many new practice problems and they don't redo enough practice problems that they've already seen. Repetition is the mother of skill. You want that to burn into your mind when you're studying for the GMAT. It's pattern recognition. It's recognizing what types of problems require which types of strategies that's going to get you the best at the GMAT the fastest. Really, the name of the game when it comes to getting super high scores is pattern recognition on the GMAT. If you can see a new question and associate it with a question you've seen before and pick the right strategy relatively quickly, you're going to do really, really great on test day. If you're constantly having to rebuild the wheel from scratch, then it's going to be really, really tough on test day. So what you want to do is just every time you see a problem where you're like, ooh, that's kind of tough, or I'm not as good at that as I would like to be, just add it to a spreadsheet, or you can use physical flashcards if you like. That's what I did back in the day. Both are fine. And just write the source of the problem so you can go back and find it later to redo it. Write down every single time you do the problem, the date that you do each problem, the time spent each time you attempt the question, and then what you want to remember next time you see the problem. And what that becomes over time is sort of like a set of flashcards where the front of the flashcard is like what you'll see on the test or what's similar to what you'll see on the test. And then the back of the flashcard is like, what do I want to remember from that? And then also with the times and dates, you'll be able to see your history with the question, which will be good for your confidence building. So you can see over time like, oh, the first 3 times I saw this question, I got it wrong in 3 minutes, but the last 2 times I got it right in 2.5. And that way you can start to feel your progress and get a better sense of when you might actually be ready to take the exam. How many problems should you have on the redo list? It's going to vary a ton from person to person. But I think I probably had about, I don't know, 300 to 600 or so, something for me back in the day. And that was really, really useful. You know, I basically just mastered that subset of 300 to 600 questions. And most, if not all the questions I saw on test day were sort of just reworkings of the core principles in those questions. And in some cases, I saw literally exactly the same problem with different numbers. So you can imagine that felt pretty good. So let's talk about a study schedule here. The main thing you want is make it part of your daily routine and use that hours estimate I gave you. So when you take your first initial practice test, calculate how many points off you are from your goal on your total score, and then budget how many hours is that likely to take, and then figure out how many hours you can study a day or per week. And then that'll give you the rough number of weeks that you'll probably need in order to feel really prepared for the GMAT. And then you'll probably want to throw a couple extra weeks in there just because adult life, stuff happens. You know, sometimes you get sidetracked, sometimes you got to be somewhere that you didn't think you had to be, and that's just how that goes sometimes. So you want to plan for a little bit of breakdown. It's unlikely everything's going to go perfectly in your GMAT studies, and that's okay. It'll only affect you as much as you allow it to affect you. But building this knowledge for this exam, you know, again, the sports analogy is great. Physical exercise analogy is good. It's kind of like going to the gym, you know, in the same way that you stress your muscles, let them recover, stress your muscles, let them recover. You're really stressing the cells in your brain, letting them recover, stressing the cells in your brain, letting them recover. So things like diet, sleep, exercise, all those things that really optimize you cognitively are extremely important to manage. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But essentially what you want to do is look at your calendar week, and if you have 6 hours to study on one day, that's not ideal, but it's a heck of a lot better than 0. So just put in the time that you do have and just make it work. If you can spread your study hours out a little bit more throughout the week, like let's say you're studying 3 to 6 days a week, then you're probably going to need fewer total study hours to get where you want to go. But if you're working 150 hours a week and all you've got is 6 hours a day on Sundays, then do it. Just do what you got to do. The main thing with building skills in almost any arena is consistency. If you keep showing up every day, you get the positive compounding effect. It's kind of like if you leave money in your 401k long enough, it starts to multiply by sort of exponential factors. Whereas if you just take the money out 10 years into it, then it stops compounding and it atrophies with inflation. You know, that's hopefully an analogy most of us business folks can relate to. So that's kind of how you want to think about your GMAT studies. Also, just momentum in general, I think, makes studying a little bit easier. Like if I studied yesterday, it's usually easier to stay in that routine. And that's why I mentioned routine at the top of the page. I think you want it to be just like going to the gym for you. It's like, yeah, I go to the gym Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 a.m. It's non-negotiable unless I'm physically ill. And I just get out of bed, I show up, I don't think about it. And if you think about what a habit is, it's free behavior. It doesn't require any willpower to do it. So you want to set something like that up for yourself with your GMAT. Just pick something realistic that you know you can commit to. And then if you can do more than that, some days, great. If you do less than that, some days, that's fine. Just do the absolute best that you can every single week, and you will eventually get there. One day you're going to wake up and be great at the GMAT, but it might take a while, and that's okay. You know, things that are worth having a lot of times are worth working for. That's my opinion. So you really want to do your best to stick to that schedule, because again, then it becomes habituated and you don't have to think about it much. If every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday after work, you go to a cafe on the way home and you study for an hour and a half for the GMAT, it's going to be really easy to stay in that routine. And you might even get to the point where you feel weird not doing it. That's kind of the point that you want to get to with your GMAT studies. I've kind of already alluded to this, but for most people, it's a bit of an emotional roller coaster in the sense that basically any long period of adult life is probably an emotional roller coaster in a lot of ways. You know, if you're studying for the GMAT, even for just 6 weeks, which would be super short for most people, some days you're going to be feeling great. Some days you're going to be feeling absolutely terrible. And that's why you just want to have a routine. Some days you clock the 90 minutes and you feel like you got nothing done. Hey, you clocked your 90 minutes. That's your job on Tuesdays. Some days you're going to clock in and that 90 minutes is going to feel like 3 hours. You're going to feel like you're on top of the world. That's great. That's fantastic. Savor those moments when they happen. But don't let the highs get to you too much and don't let the lows get to you too much. The most important thing that you do is keep showing up the next day and stick to your plan. Like I said, most plans work. It's about executing the plan. That really matters. Now, motivation doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Like I just said, the only thing that matters is showing up. It's really about discipline. It's just about putting in the time. If you put in the time and you execute your plan and you have a reasonably good plan, eventually you will wake up and get the score that you want on the GMAT. But let's be honest, motivation really helps. If you're inspired to study, then it's going to be a lot easier for most of us, okay? So one thing you can do is write down your goal and look at it every single time you study. Write it down on a note card or have a little photo album in your phone, like a vision board, if you're familiar with that term. And look at that every single time you study. Some days it's not going to hit you emotionally, but some days it's going to be like totally transformative where you show up and you're like, man, I really don't feel like studying. And you're going to see all these things that you know you can get from taking this next leap, getting your GMAT score and getting your MBA. And you're going to be like, yeah, it's worth it. It's worth it because here's the thing, everybody. You're probably going to have to say no to some stuff that you would really like to say yes to in order to make time to study for the GMAT. Most of us don't just have a ton of time to study for the GMAT. You have to take time from something else or manage your time differently to make it work. And always the question is what I'm about to do more important than hitting my GMAT goals? And if you have that vision board, you'll know what you're giving up in that moment to get what you want on that particular day, if it becomes studying versus hanging out with your best friend. And sometimes it's much more important to hang out with your best friend than it is to study for the GMAT. You have to prioritize for yourself. Other times, it's going to be less important, and those are tough decisions, but the degree to which you can make those decisions accurately will determine the quality of your success and experience studying for the exam. Let's just be honest about it. So what I'd recommend is just pause the video right now and just write down the top, let's say 5 or 10 priorities that you have in your entire life. What's your number 1 priority in life? What's your number 2 priority? Don't stress about it too much. Just get it in a rough order. And then where does the GMAT fall in that? If all those priorities are higher than the GMAT, then if there's a conflict, you're always going to double down on those top 5 priorities and not the GMAT. If the GMAT's more important than your job right now, well, then if they call you in on the weekend, you might have to say, you know, and then you do whatever you want to do in that case to make time to study for the exam, okay? So the more planning you can do ahead of time, the easier life is going to be when conflict arises. In line with that, you definitely want to have some honest conversations with your friends, your partners, your business partners, romantic partners about expectations, and just let them know that you might be a little bit less available than you normally would be. You might not be the most active member in your social group over the next 3 to 6 months that you're studying for the GMAT. Like I said, most things that are worth having are worth working toward, and a little bit of sacrifice can really sweeten the victory in the long run. You know, that's a good way to look at that. Another way to look at it is, you know, would you rather go to your team softball game as like an MBA from a sweet school, you know, like making the kind of money you want to make, having the lifestyle you want to have? And is it worth sacrificing a few, you know, indoor soccer games on Saturday morning in the short term to get on that next level so that every time you go to indoor soccer practice, you're going in your Lamborghini or whatever it is that motivates you, okay? It's not always about material things, but that's why you want to write down your goal at the beginning. So again, pause the video and just write down, what do you want out of this? What do you want from the MBA? There must be some reason that's motivating you to watch this video right now. Is it a certain salary? Is it a certain title? Is it a certain feeling when you wake up in the morning or when you get to work? Is it a certain car? Is it a certain house? Is it all of the above? What is it that you really want? And what's going to make it worth it, making the sacrifices that you're likely to make in the short term? When it comes to housemates and stuff like that, you know, keep in mind most relationships are based on reciprocity. So if you're going to ask someone else to be covering your behind on chores for the next 6 weeks, you know, what are you going to do for them? I think the earlier you can make those agreements and have everybody be on the same page and have everybody be happy about the deal that you're making, the easier and smoother your studies are going to go and the more supportive they're going to be, because if push comes to shove and it's a tough day for both of you and they're like, man, I'm really sick of doing double the amount of chores, then they'll be able to say, well, I really trust that this is going to pay off for me later. Or I'm really happy that you are now taking care of whatever it is you're taking care of in the relationship, even though your time is a little bit more constrained because of your studies. Just having that reciprocity will help resentment not build up, and the less resentment and less drama you have during your studies, the faster you're going to be done, and the sooner you can get to that, yes feeling when you wake up in the morning, which is what we all want you to have. Kind of just to balance this out, I think some people don't study enough. A lot of people overstudy. And so you definitely want to pick one weeknight and one weekend, in my opinion, one weekend night that you can just relax and enjoy and forget about the GMAT. Don't think about it at all. Don't think about your progress. Don't think about whether it's going well or not. Just forget it. It'll be better for your learning in general. And again, the physical exercise analogy is good here. If you're constantly pushing your body and never letting up and never resting, you're going to compromise how quickly you can progress. Same thing is going to happen with your studies and the way your brain basically grows. Also, for a lot of people, you're going to be very hopeful that you're going to be on the low end of the hours estimates that I gave you. And for most people, the GMAT's going to take 50 to 100% longer to study for than you think. And again, if you get some great prep providers and you get some great knowledge on your side at the beginning, you can definitely keep that from happening. But for a lot of people, things are going to go wrong. Just even if you're studying perfectly, sometimes you get promoted at work, or sometimes you lose your job, and all of a sudden you're spending, 2 months job hunting, or 2 months learning a new profession, or someone leaves is really critical, or your boss goes on maternity leave, and so now you got to pull, double hours for a few weeks. It's like all kinds of stuff can happen, and you just want to be mentally and emotionally prepared for that, so that you don't give up just when things get hard. Because things will probably get hard at some point, and having a little bit of downtime every week where you can just kind of blow off some steam and not worrying about studying, that'll help you study for a longer duration. And if you can stay in the game longer, you're probably going to outperform your competition. So I think I'm going to end this video there. We're going to have tons more content coming out on this YouTube channel. So if you liked this video, if you found it helpful, definitely give it a thumbs up. That helps the channel out for sure. And definitely subscribe if you're interested in hearing more about our philosophy at Test Crackers and getting more free information like this. I hope you found this video just unbelievably transformatively valuable. That's my goal with all of these videos. And just let me know if you have any feedback or questions in the comment section of this video, and I or someone at Test Crackers will do our absolute best to reply to every single question that you ask us. In the meantime, just stay positive and stay consistent. And what I would recommend after this video is just immediately take some action. Really, if you have to journal a little bit, just figure out, am I more the independent learner type? Am I going to be good with books or digital self-paced class? Should I get some accountability in the system? How much do I think I realistically am willing to spend? The more you spend, probably the faster you're going to be done in most cases. And like I said, reach out to me if you have any specific questions. Once you get underway, it's a lot easier to keep going. So just make a commitment right now, sign up for whatever class you're going to sign up for right now, and just start the process immediately, today, tonight, whatever time it is. Just do it right now. Get on the track. You can always change your track later. But for now, it's so much better to go 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction than it is to just stand still and do nothing. Because if you take a digital self-paced class and you're like, wow, this is terrible, this is way worse than I thought it was going to be, that's super valuable data, and you want that data point as soon as you can possibly get it, okay? Wishing you all the utmost success on your GMAT. I hope all of you become just outrageously successful and turn the world from whatever it is to the way that you want it to be, whether that's just your personal world or the world at large. And I am here to support in any way I possibly can. Like I said, if you're interested in our in-person live classes or live online classes, you can take a class with me personally, or you can take a class with any of my amazing colleagues at Test Crackers. Everybody's just a wonderful, wonderful human being. All have 99% percentile scores, generally on multiple exams, and years, in fact, decades in many cases of teaching experience, and also the hive mind of being able to bounce ideas off of each other when things get difficult with certain students. Like I said earlier, we're not our only option, and we respect that. But we do think we have a very, very high quality experience that we can offer to you. So just click the link below to see what kind of promotions we might be running at this time, and check out our class schedules at our website. In the meantime, just stay positive and stay consistent with your studies, and just let me know how you do on the exam.